So we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. This is a special session of the Greencastle Common Council. Call the roll. Adam Cohen.
Here.
Stacy Langdon.
Here.
Veronica Pedro.
Here.
Cody Eckert.
Here.
Mark Hammer.
Here.
Dave Murray.
Here.
And Daryl Thomas.
Here.
So we have everyone here. We have two items of business this evening. First is old business. This is the second reading for ordinance 2022-3, an ordinance amending section 9-11 of the Greencastle Code approving water rates and charges. And you may recall from a couple weeks ago, this is the reduction in water rates as a result of the legislature repealing the utility receipts tax. We only need to read it by title only, so I'll be happy to entertain a motion to approve ordinance 2022-3 on second reading.
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 2022-3 on second reading to reduce the bill by 4 cents. Wasn't that what it was? Yeah.
I'll second that motion. Per 100 gallons or whatever, 100 cubic feet.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any further questions or discussion? Hearing none, please indicate your approval by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? So we'll get that taken care of. Signature copies will filter around. And our second order of business is new business, and that is the interview by the Common Council of school board applicants. So I'll turn it over to the President of Common Council, Mark Hammer.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Appreciate everybody being here this evening. And for our candidates, we did a blind draw, and they were chosen in the following order. Derek Jorgensen will go first, followed by Jennifer Knoll, followed by Lee Price, and then lastly will be Russell Harvey. That is the order that was determined. We'll have up to a 4-minute introduction, a 3-minute, I believe, 3 or 4 minutes at the end, whatever time you have left at the end for a closing statement, and we'll ask lots of questions, and we hope our plan is that we will make a decision tonight. If everything goes as planned. So with that being said, I want to thank Adam for taking care of all the getting everything in order and accepting all the applications and being the contact person for the 4 members that put their names forward. And I'm glad that we have 4 interested parties, and I really do appreciate the interest and what have you. So with that being said, I don't know if there's anything else. There are some things we can't ask, and I'm sure Lori will keep us on task.
I have faith you won't ask.
Yes. Okay. So anyway, go ahead. Let's go ahead and have Derek come on up, and we'll keep it as informal as possible. Welcome, Derek.
Thank you. Yeah, my name is Derek Jorgensen. I've worked at Crown here in Greencastle for almost 12 years now, and I think it was about 5 years ago my wife and I moved our family here. My kids went to New Pathways and until they got into actual school, and now they go to Greencastle schools. So familiar with the area, and my wife was born and raised here, so she obviously has an investment here and has spent plenty of time here. And anyway, we like it here, and we want to be here. And yeah, I just want to do what I can and help out with a couple kids in the school corporation. I have interest in making sure that I have a bit of a say, and I'm educated and open to listening to different opinions. In my current job as an engineer at Crown, I deal with people from all different education levels and backgrounds and different departments. I deal with purchasing and sales and manufacturing, fabrication, weld, you name it. It's everybody. Basically, I deal with them all, from laborers all the way up to vice presidents. So yeah, I got a lot of experience dealing with different people, and I feel like I can do the job.
Okay. Thank you, Derek. We'll go ahead and start with our questions and answers, and I didn't notice exactly the time. Did you start a timer at all?
I did.
Thank you.
And if we start running ahead of time, I'll text the other candidates to get here.
Okay, sounds good.
I was from
All right.
timers.
All right, good.
So, anybody-
I can start.
go ahead.
Derek, in your application, which was not surprising, you talked a lot about science fairs
Okay.
and extending those to all the grades. Could you kind of maybe talk more about what your hope is and the reasons for that, and how that might work for a first or what grades, do you know what grades we currently do it, or what your hopes are for the grades we don't?
I do not know what grades it's currently done for. I know that, to my knowledge, with children, my children were both at Ridpath last year, and I've talked to some parents of children at Cezonicus. It's my understanding at least K through 5 is not involved in that at all. I think it would be great if we did have science fair available for younger kids, because I think it's good to get kids interested in science as young as possible, especially if it's through a positive experience and they get to see some experiments and actually conduct one themselves, learn the scientific method, and I think it's good for a first or second grader to know what a hypothesis is, and have some vocabulary at the same time and learn those kind of things. And every time that I judged a science fair in the past and had the younger kids, it was really, really neat. I think you see a lot more passion out of younger kids dealing with it too. I think with older kids, at least in my experience, a lot of them are kind of there because they needed to be there. Maybe they had some school thing where it was a requirement to do science fair, and the younger kids, it's more of like, oh wow, look at this volcano. When you go to a science fair, there's been 50,000 volcanoes before, but it's the coolest thing to a little tiny kid to see that volcano erupt for the first time, and it's super neat. So anyway, I think that's kind of the value. Get them interested early and let them learn the process and how science works, and I think it's valuable.
We're just going to keep going around. I have a couple questions, so I'll start with I have two quick ones. First one's a quick one.
Okay.
Have you ever attended a Greencastle School Board meeting?
Not in person. Yes, I have.
Okay,
Yes, sorry. The answer is yes.
okay, all right. When you think about joining the school board, I don't know how much history, how much you know about the folks that are involved right now. Is your goal to strengthen the group and continue down the path they're going? Are you looking to make changes for improvement? What's your overall goal? What made you sit back and say, hey, I think maybe I want to be on the school board? Was it a problem? Was it a, hey, this is cool, they're doing this? What led to you being here tonight?
Overall, I think I would like to see some changes. So in the school board meetings I have attended, I can say it does appear that all of the people have several years on me who are on the school board. It's not a requirement anyone be younger to be on the school board at all, obviously, but I do think that kind of like in order to understand or experience what our kids going through on a daily basis, or what are we actually dictating with the rules that we make, it helps to understand like what texting is, or how social media works, or any of that kind of stuff. Just to have understood what is Paw Patrol, or something like that. You don't know some of this information maybe if you haven't experienced it, and I think that at least from what I've seen, there's a lot of inertia pushing us just going with the status quo, and I think sometimes it would be good to step back and ask questions. Why do we do this thing we've always done this way in this way? Is there a different way to do it that could be better? I'm not saying there are better ways. I'm saying it would be nice to have a discussion and find out. Maybe nobody's ever questioned it because it's easier to vote on keeping things going the way they are, and it takes a lot less effort. And I guess I'm up to the task if needed to investigate. I guess I like to look at evidence and understand things and data and go from there. So I'd like to maybe just see if changes are worthwhile.
Okay, good. All right, thank you.
I've got a couple questions. One is really easy and short, and
See,
one
okay,
is...
we can sneak two
Yeah,
in if one's
yeah,
short.
Yes. My first question is, how long have you lived at your current address as on the application?
My current address on the application is about 11 months.
Okay, so did you move into new construction then? Or
Yes,
You
correct.
want to elaborate on that a little bit, or? Yeah, I mean, where'd you live before that? I'm just curious.
So,
Not for me.
yeah, previously I lived on Ravenwood Drive, about 3 houses down from Mark.
Right on.
Yeah, yeah.
Right on.
Yeah, so we lived there for about 4 years. And
Awesome.
then we just wanted to get something. We were both working from home at the time, and the basement in that house was unfinished, and it was a little crowded for me and my wife both to be able to do our jobs at the same time in the same house, especially with the kids. We're doing e-learning and such, and so
Indeed.
yeah, we had to expand a little.
I think I've been on some Zoom calls with your wife from the basement. So
Okay, yeah, that might be the case.
yeah. And my other question is, on your list of experience, you note that you've served on your HOA board of directors, and I think that might be an interesting lens or prism to learn a little bit more about you. Can you maybe share an example of when you made a difference, when you feel you made a difference in your role on your HOA board of directors?
Yeah, I think I can. So it's been a short amount of time. It was this year that
Sure.
I was put on the board. One thing I've tried to push for on the board since I've been on there is that we have in my 11 months there, obviously I haven't been there for a long time, but it's been my experience that we have a homeowners association, and we have this big book of rules, and nobody follows them, nobody knows them, nobody cares. And so I've kind of pushed, I think at our next meeting, or whether we have a special meeting, we haven't determined that exactly, but I think we're going to go through and try and narrow the rules down and say, these are the rules, they're going to be enforced. Anything that no one's willing to enforce, we're going to remove as a rule and say this is nonsense. If we, I can't think of a good example, but say we had a rule we thought was bad, just take it out, because if nobody's willing to actually enforce it, it seems silly to say it's a rule, and then people can argue so-and-so's breaking the rules, but ultimately if no one's going to enforce it, what's the point in it being a rule? So, yeah, that's kind of a thing I've pushed a little bit, I guess, since I started.
That's helpful. Thanks.
Yep, thank you.
Derek, can you talk about how you would assess and then tackle the problem of learning loss in Greencastle schools due to the pandemic?
Of learning loss, you say?
Learning loss due to virtual learning in the pandemic?
Yeah, I think, so it would be important to assess where everyone is, I guess, to start with. It's obviously going to be different with different students. If I'm not mistaken, I think there was a year in there even where some students were still virtual while others attended school physically, and I don't know if there's a big difference between them or not. I assume when you do virtual schooling, it also depends on if someone's involved to help the students do the work or not. So yeah, I would say we'd need some kind of an assessment there, and then at that point, I don't know the correct solution, but if we decided, I don't know if you group children by amounts of how far behind they might seem to be. If that's the case, maybe that would help out. Just to, if everyone needs to review the same thing, it would help to put them in a group. But yeah, I have to say that's something I've not thought about a ton, but I think that I certainly don't have the top answer, and I'm willing to listen to suggestions and understand, if no one I specifically personally know has expressed a huge concern about that at this time. I think most everyone I know of, me and my wife included, are more concerned about the emotional state of the kids from not having any interaction with people for a couple years versus actual, knowledge loss.
Thank you.
Yep.
You mentioned first and second graders learning what a hypothesis is. So I want to query the hypothesis by a statement that you made in your application. It says, another goal I'd have if appointed to the school board would be understanding what causes turnover in teachers at Greencastle Community Schools. What's your hypothesis behind that statement?
I don't know. I assume you're asking what is my hypothesis as far as why they would be leaving?
Yes.
I don't know if I really have a hypothesis. I mean, I assume always money is probably a factor. I don't know if there's some kind of unhappiness occurring or not. I do know that the main reason I put that in my application was that we saw at Ridpath last year, I think there were 3 teachers that had left, and I can't imagine Ridpath has 30 people working there even, so that's greater than 10% of the people working there, and 1 or 2 of them my kids had good relationships with and really liked, and I know that it was kind of difficult to see that they had gone, and I absolutely had no discussions with them at any time to understand why or what was going on. For all I know, they could have been unhappy for many years, or maybe they just were offered for all I know, they moved to another country. I don't know the background behind it, but I would be interested to understand it, but I don't have a huge hypothesis other than I'm sure that money's probably a factor, and then maybe drive time, things like that.
Thank you.
Yep.
I don't have anything.
Okay. So I had a couple questions already gotten answered, or asked, I should say, and answered. How should our school system best serve those students at the opposite ends of the spectrum? You've got the learning challenge that struggle, and then you have the high ability students that need more challenges. How do we balance that out? How do we address those people at those ends?
Yeah, so it's an interesting question, and I think it's definitely got to be the classic answer of it depends. But for instance, what I've seen with my kids at Ridpath is that any given grade, I believe, has 4 classrooms, and so it's a little more difficult to divide kids up. If you wanted to separate kids out by skill level, if that was deemed necessary, it's more difficult to do when you only have 4 classrooms. But it's my understanding at Tezonicus there'll be 8, all the kids from Deer Meadow and Ridpath coming together. So I would think it's a lot easier to do, if you have 8 classrooms. Obviously, if you have one for the high end and one for the low end of the spectrum, then it certainly becomes easier, because if you want to say you have 5 kids on the high end and 5 kids on a low end at Ridpath or Deer Meadow, it's a lot more difficult to have a specific classroom for 5. I do think, from what I understand, they do pull them out of the classroom occasionally, like at Ridpath, to do some extra stuff if needed. That seems as if it works all right. I don't know that there would be a better way. I don't know if there's a good need to push that much focus on kindergarten through 2nd graders necessarily, even maybe based on ability level. I think as the kids get older, then maybe it becomes more of a factor. But I can at least say with my kids, they both do well in school, and I think they're still mostly excited to go play on the playground. That's the K through 2 attitude, I think. Yeah,
lunch and recess.
Yeah, they might get excited about art or gym or something, depending on what they're doing on a particular day. But yeah, nobody's really like, man, I'm ready to do extra reading today. Or if they are, they do that at home in their own books, and they're not looking for more challenging assignments in school necessarily, which it's not necessarily about what they want. Obviously, it's what's best to get them learning. But yeah, I think that I think from what I can tell, things seem like they're done in an okay fashion as far as I know right now. But again, I haven't. Next year will be the first year I've had anybody anywhere but Ridpath, so I don't know a ton about how that's done. And then the high school and such, I don't know how they do that. I would hope there's opportunities for kids like to take some classes at DePaul and such if they're on the higher end, but I don't know what it is they do. I'd have to catch up on that information.
Okay.
There are some programs for honor students to take classes.
Sure.
Yeah.
Got to shut down during COVID, but I think they're coming back. So one of the unique things, whether it's pro or con, is not my or your call, about our position is that you're not elected by the people. How do you feel, you obviously know your social group, your friend group, do you have any thoughts on how you might go out and reach the community so everyone at all spectrums of our community are able to know that you represent them?
Well, if I'm not mistaken, I think I may have a unique situation in that I'm a parent of students. I'm not sure if anyone currently on the school board does have children in school right now, but I definitely don't think they all do, if that's the case. So I think just going to school events would be one way. Yeah, aside from that, I will say I would be open to receiving emails or communications to talk with people. I know one frustration I've heard from several people I've spoken to is that at any point, if they want to get a hold of a school board member, I'm not sure that I know anyone who's ever gotten a response from a school board member at any point. Occasionally, I've heard of people getting responses from the superintendent, but I don't actually know anybody who's ever gotten a response from a school board member. Right or wrong, maybe there was some agreement that I'm not aware of, or maybe it's signed documentation that school board members aren't to interact with the community in that way. But I know I've had several people mention that to me, that they've never gotten a response on any questions they've sent to school board members about anything. So I would certainly be, happy to respond to people when they have questions. I think that it would be good to have more of an open dialogue with people, and I can say that the school board meeting I attended, it was myself, and if there was anyone there who wasn't a principal besides me, it was maybe one or two teachers, but there was no one else at the school board meeting other than me and principals at the time. So
See our attendance here.
yeah, it was similar. Yeah.
Sometimes that's not the case. Sometimes it's packed.
Yeah, but I think it would be good. I don't know if the community wasn't attending because they thought it was pointless to attend. I do know that the meeting structure is set up in such a way that if you have questions about things, you can't ask them unless it's on the agenda already. I don't know if it would be. I know meetings could get long and drug out if you accept every question anyone ever has, but I do think it feels a little bit right now like it's a closed system that nobody gets to participate in, and I definitely think that it would be good to answer people's questions if they have them, or at least acknowledge I got your question and I can't answer it right now. You'll need to contact the superintendent, something to that effect. At least a response would be healthy, maybe.
Kind of jump in here if I can. As a kind of a follow-up to that, do you have, what do you feel are pros and cons or reasons that, to have an elected school board versus an appointed one?
Obviously, if a school board's elected, then they have accountability to the people who elected them, to where they have to please those people, and so then the people's voice is heard. I suppose with an appointed one, you may be, I've thought before, so I came from Clay County is where I grew up, and it was always an elected school board, so it's odd to me it's appointed here. And I always thought, well, obviously that's the way it should be done because that was what I grew up with, but I don't know that it's a ton different, because you've all been elected, obviously, by the people, right, to sit in the chairs you're sitting in. So in a way, the people are having their voice heard anyway. I'm not sure if, like you pointed out, there's not large attendance here tonight, but I'm not sure if the people are paying enough attention to be interested, but certainly if they are, they have the ability to contact all of you and say, hey, this is the person I want up there. Please appoint them because of X number of reasons. And I don't know if any of you have been contacted by anybody about anything like that, but certainly the opportunity's there. So I don't see it as being a massive difference the more I've thought about it. It's different, but I don't know that it's better or worse.
And just for the record, I believe 3 out of the 5 have children in the school system now.
Do they? Okay.
And also, I think there are only 7 or 8 left of the appointed in the state.
Is that right?
I think there's that many.
I thought it was only 2.
Yeah, I thought
Definitely the exception.
Well, but I saw something that, Kelsey had sent me about the school boards and stuff like that, and I thought it was like 10 or 12.
I thought but it dropped. We lost a couple.
Did we? I mean, there were some communities like Wabash, I think, was appointed. Can't remember. There's others. It seemed like they were moderately sized cities. They
Yeah.
obviously weren't the major metropolitans, and I don't think there were any that were consolidated or anything like that. There
But
might
for the
be.
record, we do not control that decision.
Yeah, we do not.
Yeah, I was thinking that you had put that on a frequently asked questions or something somewhere. I thought I was,
We do
Yeah.
not control the
Yeah.
decision.
yeah.
Just to back up a little bit, and Bill, can you double-check me on this? I have not been to a recent school board meeting, but I've attended many. I think there's a sign-in sheet, and I think it has a purpose, or if you want to address the group. And then at the end, I think they do open it up for questions. Now, I haven't been in a few months, but at least the meetings I attend, unless they've changed the setup, you do have a chance, an opportunity as a parent or a, concerned person.
The school board does tend to, we're pretty informal here. If we're talking about a subject, if somebody wants to make a comment from the audience, we generally will open the floor for that. The school board is a little more rigid in their structure, but
yeah.
they also deal, a fair amount of their agenda time is spent on personnel items, which have a whole separate set of rules, like we don't deal much in personnel items here at City Council, so
Those meetings are a little
there's
dry.
some different
Yeah, there's
differences in how we can operate just by
But I
virtue
do
of the
think they
subject
have,
matter.
I think they have a mechanism where people can sign up.
think
Right,
so.
Lori?
Yeah,
There
when
is
you
a
first
public
sign in.
comment.
I'm
Yeah,
sure they do.
yeah.
I'm sure, they have some, it's
Yeah.
some public
Yeah.
meetings.
Yeah.
Something.
I guess maybe a better way to say it maybe is that if I were on the school board, I would say that questions are welcome. Maybe it seems if you attend as if questions are not very
Well,
welcome.
that's a segue to my question for you. Okay, you've got 5 people on the school board, helping to make decisions for hundreds of students that will impact administrators, teachers. I think it's very important that you realize you have a voice. You are one of 5 people. Can you give an example of a time when maybe you were passionate about a cause and you spoke up and you brought about change? Have you had any experiences like that? Because they don't want someone who's timid and is just going to be a yes man and that type of thing. I think they want thinkers. I think they want people that are willing to voice their opinion when situations come up that they have an opinion on. So any situations like that in your work career, anything where you were passionate about something and you pushed for change or to be heard?
Yeah, I think a good example that maybe would be kind of recent for everyone to have experienced was in 2020 at the beginning of the pandemic when we first were hearing about COVID and nobody knew anything about it. There clearly weren't any vaccines, and nobody really even knew if it was around the Midwest yet. Turns out it likely was, but nobody really knew yet what was going on. I kind of lobbied and requested to our management that we have the opportunity to work from home if needed, and that was kind of laughed off like it was foolish. And so I gathered some data and information to kind of show that maybe it's more serious than you guys are given to it, and maybe we should think a little harder about it, and maybe it's not a joke that we should really consider that if somebody's doing a job in which they don't have to be physically in the building, maybe be a little more lax than what you've been in the past. And ultimately we did have the opportunity to work from home for quite a while, for roughly 18 months or so during the heart of the pandemic. In fact, we went back to the office right before the Delta variant hit, and then when the Delta variant hit, I made similar comments again, and then we were able to go back home again if needed to work from home for a while longer, because that was obviously a little more difficult even at that time than what the original variant was. So I'd say that's an example of a time.
Okay.
I would genuinely say if it weren't for me speaking up, everyone would have just been in the office the whole time.
Okay, thank you.
Related to just general attendance and public meetings, whether it's city council here in Greencastle or our school board, I'm curious what motivates folks to come sit, right? What motivated you to go to the school board meetings that you've attended, and do you feel you got out of the experience, what you'd hope to get?
So I did, at the school board meeting I attended in person was due to COVID-19, a lack of any restrictions that were being required at the beginning of the school year last year. I thought that was unacceptable and foolish. At that time, one of you mentioned, we were looking at kids K through 12. At that time, there certainly were no vaccines for anyone under 18, 16, whatever the number was.
I think I remember the meeting you speak of. I think I may have been there too. So,
yeah. So anyway, that got me motivated to speak up at least. And I thought it was important that somebody bring it up at least, because it wasn't the case that all these kids were. It's certainly a thing to have the opinion that if someone's vaccinated or can be vaccinated, that's their choice. But we were looking at shoving a bunch of kids into small rooms together with no restrictions who weren't capable of having vaccinations, and that seemed a little overboard to me.
And unrelated to, maybe I should save my next question.
Go ahead.
Oh, so you're a mechanical engineer. I'm the kid of a mechanical engineer and the parent of a mechanical engineer. I think mechanical engineering is amazing and awesome, and I think more mechanical engineers should be on school boards. But I also honor that you were talking about wanting to be present and make your voice heard with respect to improving the social outcomes for students at this challenging time, right? As everyone in work communities, but especially in school communities, whether it's faculty, staff, and especially students, are continue to be challenged by the COVID experience, right? What could you imagine? What would you advocate for in terms? And I also honor that most mechanical engineers are not psychologists, right? But what might you advocate for that you believe might help improve the social outcomes of students in our Greencastle schools?
So I'll speak from a
tough question.
I'll speak from a place for youth, because I have first and second grade last year where my students were. Something that I think, as far as getting back on the bandwagon with social skills and understanding. I'm as a mechanical engineer. You indicated mechanical engineers, so you're probably aware we're socially awkward, and it's
I love my
difficult. But so my kids may have some of my tendencies and be a little socially awkward at times as well. So I think it's helpful if they're able to have some social time, and I think the more social time the better, especially. In our particular household, at least, I don't have a lot of concerns about education for my kids at this grade level. At least I think they're both doing well. And if they needed to miss another 20 or 30 minutes of schooling of education time to have more social time to just understand each other and the members of the school and their experiences and whatnot, I think that would be valuable. I know one. Just for instance, thing I've observed is that frequently it seems like if anyone's misbehaved or deemed to have misbehaved, recess is taken away as a punishment. And at least for my children, I think that's like the worst thing anybody could ever do. I don't know how someone would take my kids' recess away and then think their afternoon's not going to be miserable, because those kids need the time to let it all out and run around in circles and just get some energy out and socialize. And to me, that's very valuable time to the kids. That I'm not saying I have a great solution as to what the alternative is, but I think that
like I said, you're not a psychologist.
Exactly, I'm not a psychologist. That's what I will say, that I would want to get more information from psychologists and hear what experts on the matter would say, yeah. But, yeah, I certainly think that, at least from my observation, it's good to let the kids get back into peopling, because it's been a challenge to get back to that, the new norm, or whatever anyone wants to call it.
Great. Thank you.
Well, the nice part about being on this end of the table is that most of the questions have already been asked, so I'll cede my time to anybody else who has any other questions.
I'm good.
After 30 years of working with committees of all sizes and shapes, I've learned that there are thinkers, there are talkers, there are doers, and then there's another one that fits anybody. How do you fit in that explanation?
If I was in there, I would say I'm probably more of a thinker. I would typically probably be a pretty bad salesman. I'm not a talker. That's a fact.
There's a lot of us like
Yeah,
that.
yeah. I would say thinker is probably the best category for me. Yeah.
What do you believe best qualifies you to serve as a school board member for the next 4 years and possibly longer?
I think that I care, which is I care about the education of the kids and the well-being of the kids. And I in all honesty, I don't necessarily love sitting in front of people and making decisions, but I'm not looking for any notoriety or public face or anything necessarily. I just want to do what's best for the kids in the community and make sure they get the best education they can, and whatever amount I can do to aid that, I would be happy to do. But that's I think that's mainly it.
Okay.
I'm good.
How are we doing time-wise?
About 33 minutes, so we're good to do closing.
Okay.
I mean, you don't have to go for 10 minutes, you go.
Yeah. You can spend as much time as you want to.
Time for that 20-minute speech you were talking about, right? Yeah. Let me get my papers out.
Yeah.
No, I think that's really it. I think you've all asked really good questions, so I'm not sure I have a lot else to say that you haven't already asked about or has been brought up, other than just I want to make sure that everybody gets the best education they can, and that they're taken care of as needed. I guess maybe I will, since I have a few minutes, I will share one thing. Somebody mentioned I advocated for science fair. An experience I did have one time that was really interesting, and I think was kind of a formative situation in my life. Maybe I didn't have any children yet, and at least for me, I shouldn't speak for everyone, but in my 20s I was less worried about kids and maybe everyone's mental health, and more of just I'm going to a science fair, I'm going to look at all these facts and such. And I went to the science fair, and I ended up getting younger high school students to judge as the category I was judging. And there were several people had their boards all made up and fancy reports and all this. And there was one girl who had about 5 or 6 pieces of paper that were just like white lined paper that were just ripped up by hand, and they just had some fingerprints on them. There was no report, no board, there was nothing like that with it at all. And so anyway, I did the typical science fair judge thing, was just, why don't you tell me about your project and tell me what it is you're doing. And that girl talked longer than any other person did the whole time, and she had so much enthusiasm in these fingerprints and what the differences in them were. And it really really kind of shook me a little bit, just because it was very clear with what she presented. Like, I know my parents would have never allowed me to attend a science fair and not have a board and the report. Like, you better have that stuff. And I'm confident from what I saw that she didn't have the parental push or anyone at home backing her to do any of this. This was just her passion. And like I said, she was so happy about it, so excited. And seeing that excitement for science and to be involved was just amazing to me. Like, it really got me excited to be involved and be a part of it. I wish, I wished at that time and wish that girl had somebody. I imagine what she could have done if she had more parental involvement or somebody that cared. And I think if science fair can be a good positive opportunity for people to give good feedback to kids maybe that need some good feedback and some opportunity and aren't being encouraged at home, to get some encouragement and kind of a pat on the back and a good job. So anyway, that was one positive experience from a science fair that I just thought I'd share, because that was a big deal to me. I thought it was important. But yeah, other than that, I think you guys have asked good questions, and I think I've answered everything that I can think of. I don't think I have anything more to say.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Derek.
Yep,
Appreciate
thank you.
it.
Appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
I would mention that with your background and interest in science and things, that the city has partnered with the school district and invested about $400,000 through its redevelopment commission to outfit a makerspace at the middle school and a makerspace at the high school. So there may be opportunity to provide some advisory capacity to the schools with your skill sets.
Okay, that would be great. Yeah, I'd love to do that.
I'll try to text you tonight. Assuming we get a decision done, I'll try to text you an answer so you know what's going on.
Okay, I was going to say, I wasn't sure if I needed to hang out for the rest.
You're allowed to.
I'm happy to do so, whatever the case, yeah.
You're certainly allowed to.
Yeah.
But
I don't think most people do.
Okay. All right, that's
That's
fine
up
with
to
me.
you.
Appreciate it. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Derek.
Thanks.
I saw it, yeah.
So familiar. I know. I think she was, I don't know if that was when we were there. Exactly.
saw Jennifer come in, I thought.
Yeah,
She's coming up.
okay. Hello, come on up. Hi.
Is this the hot seat?
There it is.
The hot mic.
Hey, hotter than
It's
hot.
warmed up.
Literally.
Everything's warmed up today.
You're on TV.
And we have you on TV, so yes.
Oh, wow. Now to make me nervous.
Shouldn't have said that.
I know, I was fine until then, almost.
There'll be no karaoke round.
Well, Jennifer, we appreciate you coming in this evening and putting your name forward, and we got lots of questions and everything else. Give you your full allotment of time, and we'll try to get a decision made this evening and notify you and everything else, what we've decided, and we're very excited to have you up here.
Thank you.
So we'll go ahead and open with,
Unless she gets an opening comment.
yep, there we go. Okay, yep, so you have an opening comment, and then we'll go ahead and ask some questions.
Well, I go by Jenny, but my full name is Jennifer Knoll. I've lived in Putnam County almost all of my life. I graduated from North Putnam High School. I got a bachelor's degree from DePaul University in elementary education. I got a master's at Indiana State University in administration and supervision, and then I went back to Indiana State and got a principal's license. My first 10 years in education I spent at North Putnam. I taught grades 3, 4, 5, and 6, and then I was the gifted and talented coordinator for the district, and I traveled around to the elementaries, the middle school, and the high school. From there, I got my first job in administration, and that was at Cloverdale Middle School. That was the very first year that it was built. And for those of you who are as old as me in the room, then you remember 1999 and the Y2K, and we were so afraid all the computers were going to crash. And so I remember exactly what year I was there. that was the very first year that that building opened. So I was on the tail end of a lot of the construction, but we had to put together all the new safety handbooks and all of that for that particular building. That was the same year that the position came open at Tezonicus. And I actually was a student when it was Northeast Elementary. I was there for about a half a semester when my mother remarried. I really have a niche for grades 3, 4, and 5, so I chose to go back there. And I was the assistant principal there and the gifted talented coordinator for the district. I stayed for 5 years. Really could have stayed longer, but that was the year there was a big budget crisis in the state, and they were riffing teachers. And when you're an assistant in anything, you fear for your job. So I took a leap of faith, and I went to Indianapolis, and I worked in an inner city school district, Metropolitan School District of Wayne Township. I was a principal there. There are 11 elementaries, and my particular school was a magnet for the gifted and talented. So I had self-contained, multi-age, and cluster grouping for gifted and talented. The school where I was a majority-minority school, which that was a new term for me, but there were 17 different languages spoken at this particular school. And with those 17 languages, along with the Hispanic population and the black population, that made up the majority of the school district. So it was kind of like you had to teach kindergarten and those basics of kindergarten to all those new students coming in because they did not speak a word of English. I would have stayed there longer, but I had some health issues and I ended up having a heart attack. So I chose to step down after 2 years and still having time on my contract, but I knew that was what was best for my health. And so I went back to the elementary and I taught again at grades 2 and 3. Spent my last 10 years there, and when COVID hit, I kind of hit the door because of my health situation. I have 2 daughters, both in education. One daughter teaches kindergarten at Fillmore, and my other daughter is a principal at Newmarket Elementary with Southmont. So I feel like I'm always going to be in school. I have 6 grandchildren, 3 of them go here to Greencastle, and 3 of them are at South Putnam. So school is a huge part of me. When I retired, little did I know that I was going to have to do virtual learning with 3 of my grandkids because my daughter, who's the principal, is trying to run a building virtually. I learned the importance of all that virtual learning. We were all guinea pigs. We were all learning it together, but having a child that was a kindergartner and can't read, that was a huge impact, and we decided to hold him back a year. Having another granddaughter who is visually impaired and has an IEP and couldn't see those little bitty screens on the Chromebook, and thank goodness we had a really good teacher who was helpful and would send me whatever she was working on so that I could blow it up for her and make it bigger. But I saw that COVID learning loss. I put my name in the hat because I have grandkids who go here. I also put my name in my hat because even though I can't work now because of my health, I feel like I still have a lot to give, and I feel like I'm pretty good at education. I've held down about every job you can when it comes to schools, and I feel like I can give a lot of good input to the school board.
Perfect. Okay. Okay. Well, you talked about learning loss and everything else, so can you expand upon that and the social loss of being able to be in classroom and playgrounds and what have you with your
Oh, I think it's huge.
Yeah.
I think the COVID learning loss is probably a lot bigger than we anticipated. Like I said, we held our grandson back. I should say we, the parents did. But, I mean, he was young, but there was a huge learning loss there. I know I put on my application, I'd be interested to see the data because I'm kind of a data junkie. I love to analyze scores and NWEA and all of that. But I'd love to see the difference between where our scores were 5 years ago compared to those students who've had that COVID learning loss, especially at the primary grades, because those primary grades, that's your bread and butter. You've got to learn to read, you've got to learn the alphabet, and if you don't get it at the primary grades, it's just going to be that much harder. So I really would like to dive into the data and just see where we are and and talk with the administration and the superintendent and see what he already has planned and what they have plans in place. I know my daughter has an online school this summer that, that really opens up to a lot of people that can't go to summer school by having it at home.
Okay.
Well, I'm going to shift gears a little. I was going to ask about learning loss, but Mark, no, it's awesome because you brought up something different. You spent a couple of years working in a school district in Indy that is totally different than the
Absolutely. I spent 15 years there.
You spent 15 years in Indianapolis?
Well, when I stepped down from being a principal, I still stayed in Wayne Township.
Okay. Mm-hmm. But you weren't actually in the school teaching at that point?
Yes, she was.
Yes.
Oh, you were teaching the elementaries there?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I went to a different building, but yes, but still part of Wayne
I was
Township.
going to say, I'm not sure teaching second graders is any less stressful than being a principal. But that's a whole different question. I won't
I
ask.
can actually tell you it is. But teaching there is completely different from teaching.
And that was what I was going to get to. So we have a very homogeneous school district here, a very diverse school district there. What lessons could you bring us from that experience to a district that is criticized, frankly, sometimes for
Well,
being
we
too
can't help that
homogeneous?
we're not homogeneous.
Yeah,
But
totally.
what I learned was you have to go about teaching completely different when you are teaching to an environment where the kids can't speak any of the language. And so what you do in a kindergarten classroom is pretty much what you have to do in all those classrooms. Now, we had English second language teachers. We had several of them. But the other thing is we learn by pictures. And so we would have pictures posted throughout all of our classrooms for what is a door, what is a desk, what is a book. We would teach through video clips, a lot of little movies. The good thing about that is that children pick up the language very quickly. And so, and the other part of that was if I had a student that only spoke Arabic, I could find another student in the school that spoke Arabic and talk to that particular student. We had a high Hispanic population, so there was always somebody particular in that classroom that could speak to that particular student. We also had interpreters on call. So you think about sitting down at a parent-teacher conference and they only speak French, and I don't speak French, I only speak English. I would have to bring in interpreters all the time for conferences. With doing discipline, I always had to bring in interpreters or the English second language teachers to help me interpret to the parents. And that's...
Do you think there's ever any value, I'm just thinking off the top of my head here, in some type of interaction between a school like that and a school like ours?
Absolutely. It was a wonderful experience. I don't regret going there for 1 minute. I mean, I love Putnam County and I love everything about it, but there's something different about going up into a school and you think about what that child goes home to. And especially after the housing market crashed in 2005, our population changed greatly because there were big 3,000 square foot homes. It wouldn't just be one family that lived there. There might be 3 or 4 families that lived there, all related or all speaking the same language, but just learning from their cultures, it made a better environment for all of us.
Jenny, my kids are grown, so I don't live in that world anymore, but I did. But I think about the last 10 years, oh my goodness, all the issues facing the schools it's amazing to me what teachers have to go through, whether it's mental health, whether it's safety. What do you think are the biggest issues that teachers, administrators, school districts are facing in this day and age? It's just, I can't even imagine what it would be like to be a teacher right now.
I think number one is morale.
Is what, morale?
Morale. They have such low morale right now from being attacked by the public that they feel like, oh, it's the teacher's fault. It's always their fault. They're not good enough. And then, the whole COVID thing came along and, oh, thank goodness, with sending them back to the teachers. But the morale is really low. Mm-hmm. I think ever since the pay changed for teachers, when the former governor went to be the president at Purdue, that changed morale completely. More teachers are leaving the field now than ever before. They're getting out as soon as they can retire. And I think as a school district, we have to figure out ways to keep them here. We also have to figure out ways to bring in the really great teachers. When we look at the teachers that are here, they're good, but are we drawing people from the outside that are great? I don't know if we can with our base salary the way it is, and if you drive 25 miles, it's double that. So I think we have to think outside the box on how we can boost morale and how we can draw people in that are really great teachers. And it has to be things that maybe don't cost that much, because we don't have the money base that Plainfield does or Avon does. But thinking, what can we do to boost morale that doesn't cost us a lot of money?
I'm going to get back to that point, because I think that's at the crux of all of the all of the challenge, many of the challenges we face in public education these days. I appreciate you Jenny, you sharing your family story, mentioning that you are a family of educators. I also come from a family of educators. My mom was the third generation, and I was the fourth.
I have lots of aunts who are also educators.
My mom taught middle school math for 25 years. Bless her soul for doing that. That's a real challenging.
Bless you for having to do all the equations.
I sort of was the outlier because I went into higher ed, but my son, so I have two sons, they graduated from Purdue. My twins did in 2017.
I have twins as well.
Excellent. I think I remember seeing that in your notes. So Joe decided to study mechanical engineering, and I've already spoke about him a little bit this evening, but Frank went in to get a degree in math education. And he taught for 2 years up at Portage High School up in the region, and then moved out of the profession. I applaud him for making an early choice to find his passion, and also to find a more satisfying and career, because his reality was very, very different from my mother's reality teaching in the 80s. It's a whole different profession now, and I recognize that one school board nor one school board member can get us back to those days of pensions and fully funded programs. But you were talking briefly, and this is where I was saying I'm going to come back to it. You said there's got to be some things that we can do that improve retention, that don't cost a lot or might even not cost anything. What leaps out at you, having been in the profession as long as you have, what leaps out at you as any kind of potential morale boosting incentivizer for especially the seasoned and frankly jaded veteran teachers?
Well, I think probably your teachers association, when you do negotiations for contracts, they ask for different things. And sometimes they ask for things that don't cost a lot of money. For example, what if you gave them another half day, a personal day? That may cost you a little bit for having to hire a sub, but it doesn't cost you a lot of money. Have we looked into DePaul University and offering classes to them that they might be able to take at a discounted rate? Have we looked at gym memberships, whether at the Lilly Center or even just being able to go to the high school gym and work out, or even creating a mini gym or something within the schools themselves? Have we thought about maybe having a donut bar, once a month, where somebody goes in and just has breakfast for them, make them feel appreciated, make them feel wanted and worthy? And I think you're going to go a long way if we can do that with them.
I think that, I love those ideas, and I'll share one of my own, just that, and I can't lay claim to it. I've heard it from someone else. But the notion, to the sub point, right, because we all know that finding an adequate supply of labor of any sort, especially subs, is really challenging these days. Somebody threw out the notion that our state legislature should agree to spend each of them spend one day substitute teaching in a public school near where they live.
We'll see if they survive.
Yes, and to perhaps also give them some sensitivity training to what's going on in our schools so that they can be better informed
Yes.
when it's time for them
It'd be
to
nice.
Yeah,
It would.
right on.
I'll leave it there.
Jenny, you talked about grades 3, 4, and 5 being your specialty, or that's where your heart lies. Can you talk about how you're bringing expertise in those grades would help benefit the school board, in its current makeup, and what that would do for the school corporation?
Well, I think about just good foundation, like curriculum development and your scope and sequence, and what are we doing with the standards? Are we spiraling those standards so that we're not just teaching something once? Are we teaching it twice and 3 times? And is there a pattern that goes with this so that it grows? And what are we doing to go back to those kids who didn't show mastery of that particular concept? The NWA that Greencastle uses, I actually brought that to the district 20 years ago. I investigated it and researched it and brought it to Tezonicus. I love NWA. You can do so much with those particular reports, and it really dives down into the curriculum, and you can see where a child is showing mastery or they're not, or if they're not making growth. What are we doing with those kids who aren't making growth? And then what are we doing with those kids in that top tier of growth? Are they in those cluster groupings, or are we challenging them in any way? The other thing is just the alignment of curriculum from the primary buildings onto the intermediate buildings. Is that an easy flow? Are we missing standards between those 2 buildings? And then the same thing, are the 3 through 5 teachers, are they able to communicate with the middle school teachers in the 6th grade? Are we missing something at the intermediate level that they need to know? And are we hitting those curriculum spots? I mean, I could talk all day on this if you want.
For those of us that have not taught in a public school in 30 years, it was 30 years ago, 37 years ago. What did you mean by
NWA is the testing tool, one of the testing tools that is used by the district, and it will send home a parent-generated report, and it will say what the average score is or where your child should be at this point, and then you can tell if the child is above it or below it, and then you can tell if they have grown throughout the year, because you can look at the lines if they're going up. But if they're not going up, then you can actually print out a report on NWA. Now, I haven't used NWA in a long time, okay? So it's probably changed a lot, but my daughters still use it. It will tell you what skills they're missing out on.
Okay, good enough.
And it's real important for administrators to have meetings with parents so they understand those reports.
Yeah, it breaks it out by not just math and English, but what type of math, what part are you
each
missing?
standard.
Is it just computation, or is it analyzing, or is it? Yeah,
It's a really great tool because you can't just
it's
look
better
at one
than
data
iStep
point.
for sure.
You can't just look at I learned and the child didn't pass. You've got to look at how they did in the classroom. You've got to look at how they did on the NWA, and you need input from the teacher as well.
Thank you.
I spent a lot of years at Ben Davis High School and the schools that feed them. So, boy, I sure can relate to your comments about the languages being spoken at university, and in the evening programs in particular, where I had parents there, I work through interpreters constantly.
Yeah. I never knew there were interpreters on call, but I figured out that number real quick.
I need to have you address something for me. You were a principal at Bridgeport Elementary for 2 years.
At Westlake Elementary.
Westlake? It says Bridgeport Elementary
I
here.
was a teacher at Bridgeport after that. After my heart attack, I went there.
Okay. principal and then stepped down to go back to the classroom. My question is, was that voluntary? Because my understanding was that
Yes,
you
it
were
was
asked
voluntary.
you were asked to step down.
No, I was not asked to step down. I had a 3-year contract, and that's a very valid question because I think you would want to know that. I had a 3-year contract, but like I said, I had health condition. It started actually when I was at Tezonicus, and I'd be walking around with heart monitors underneath my sweater or my shirt, and my cardiologist said, you have to get out of this stress. You cannot work these 16-hour days. And it was shortly after that I had a heart attack, and I go to the Cleveland Medical Clinic because I have a really rare heart and vascular disease. But no, it was completely voluntary.
Okay, thanks. That's it for me.
You've got a whole variety of backgrounds. How did we as an education community come out, and we're not out of the COVID thing yet, were we successful?
It's a good question.
Successful in addressing the issues that education faced during the COVID, the 2 years of all
think we all
that?
had a
Have we
huge-
been successful?
I don't know if I can answer that question because I don't have the data to look at to see if we were successful and compare that to old data. I don't know what kind of summer school programs that you have and if it has addressed those students who are in need. So I can't actually answer that without knowing more information. I can tell you from a grandparent standpoint, we were all thrown in the fire. The whole nation was. We were just trying to learn how to do this virtual learning, and it was a struggle bus for all of us. By the time the second year rolled around and we were still doing a lot of the virtual learning, it got easier, and teachers got a lot better about posting things online.
Is that our future?
Oh, no, I hope not. I think it's an alternative to some students, but I think in-person learning is the most valuable. But I think it's always going to be around if that's available.
And you probably have addressed this somewhat, but how should our school system best serve those students at the opposite ends of the spectrum? I mean, obviously, you have a great amount of experience in classroom as an administrator and everything else, you know, with the kids that are challenged with learning and also the kids at the other end of the spectrum with high ability. How do we
I'll
best
start
go-
with the high ability because that's what I've
That's your-
worked in
yep.
for so long. With the gifted and talented programs, I don't know exactly what we have here at Greencastle now. I know there was a shift in the programming while I was at Tezonicus, and we moved away from multi-age and the 2-3 program, and we were doing more cluster grouping, and I don't think that is as beneficial as a self-contained classroom. But it's also important to truly identify those who are within that gifted range for a multi-age program. I think sometimes the high ability gets overlooked because they're often helping those who don't understand the material, or they get it and they're done, and the teacher has to spend so much time with those who are struggling. And I'm guilty of that too. I was as an administrator, because your heart goes out to those who don't get it and you want them to be successful. But I think we also need to look at, you know, if the child's not learning in this mode of learning, can you give them something else? Can you teach it in a different way? And whether that is through, like you were talking about, the virtual learning, you know, if they can plug that back in at home and have it taught again, reteaching, that we might get more students. But I think, you know, your data will tell you who those students are, and then, you know, through administration, the superintendent, they can tell you what are they doing with those particular students.
Okay, thank you.
So, we debated this, but we are in the minority of school districts that are left that are not elected?
Or left with what? I'm sorry.
Appointed school boards.
Yes. I think you're only one of two in the state.
2 or 3, we were trying to figure it out.
I Googled it once.
Oh, right.
It's been a while, but at that time, there were 2 in the state.
Again, not in our control. But you're going to be responsible for representing a very diverse community. Economically, educationally, we have the largest employers from Walmart to DePaul, very different audiences. How will you try to reach out and make people know you are available and you are their representative? You're really not our representative, you're their representative.
Well, I think social media is a good tool for reaching out. I know I just put a link on my Facebook page of yesterday's article from the Banner Graphic, and I mean, I had people inboxing me, and I'm like, I'm just going for an interview. I'm just going for an interview, But already people were wanting to tell me all these different situations. I think through church, I've gone to Greencastle Christian Church for over 30 years, and it has a variety of people there, and they will confide in you because they trust you. Having lived in this community for a number of years, people have trust in me, and so I think they would reach out to me if there were a concern.
Thank you.
Are you familiar with our current school board
No,
and our superintendent?
I Googled all of you yesterday just so I could kind of see a picture of some of the people, but no, I am not familiar.
Well, you've talked about it a little bit, but what do you think you can bring to a school board that they may not have right now?
A different perspective. I don't know if any of the school board members have an education background, and I think that I can be the advocate for the kids because I have kids here. I can be an advocate for teachers because I am a teacher at heart. I can be an advocate for administration because I've been in their shoes for 10 years as well. So just being supportive, but understanding what goes in to what is being brought to the school board, I think is huge as well. And I think that's where I can be a benefit.
You would be one of 5. And it's so important to realize that you have a voice. In the past, have you been in situations where you've had to speak up for something that you're passionate about?
Absolutely.
I mean, you've already kind of alluded to it a little bit, but can you give an example or, something where you felt strongly about it and you said, I'm going to make a difference and I'm going to get my point across?
Oh, goodness. I can't even pick out one thing. I am very passionate about data, and I think the data tells a story. And, teachers don't want to always look at that data, but in my opinion, you have to look at the data because that's how your school gets ranked. That's what puts that letter grade on your school. It impacts your funding for the schools. And so if we want to see growth, you have to start somewhere, and that data is a starting point, but it can't be the end-all, be-all, because we all know kids have off days, and they're not going to test well. So it can only be one piece of the puzzle. So I would think that you'd have to look at the data, but you also have to look at like your NWEA data, and you have to get the teacher's opinion. And I think that's the point that's been missing, and it's been missing for a number of years, is just giving the teachers that voice of, listen, let me tell you about their family, because we don't know what those kids go home to at night. And that can impact learning a ton, and it helps you to understand, but it also helps us to develop programs so that we can continue to get better.
I've got a quick and easy question, and also a slightly longer and more challenging one. First question is, how long have you lived at your current address that you have on your application?
That is a really good question.
That's why I asked it.
My husband and I are in the process of selling our home, and we built the house 20-some years ago, and so we've lived there. So we just recently bought a condo here in Greencastle where we plan to land for a few years, and he's going to retire in 2 years, and then we'll decide if we're going to build another. I need a one-story home, and if you know where I live, you know that it's a very big house and 3 different stories.
And so how recently is recent?
I have not moved into the house yet. We
Oh.
are flipping it right now.
Okay.
So we've got the floors all torn out, the kitchen all torn out. And I did express that when I called, that we were buying this place, but we are moving there. We just haven't moved in just yet.
Okay.
Wait, so do you live in the city?
I have a home at Ridgeland.
So she's shown her intent to reside.
But you don't reside in the city.
We will be within 2 months. We're waiting to close on our home.
Okay.
That's an issue.
Let's.
I did share that, though, when
Okay.
I applied, because I wanted to make sure that I wasn't breaking any rules.
Gotcha.
Mike, who did you share that with?
When I called the administrative assistant,
Linda Huber, I think, answered the phone because for whatever reason, her actual application ended up in
junk mail.
Linda's spam folder. We found it. It arrived in a timely fashion. But I'm not privy to the conversation they had about residents, but,
That might become,
Well, I think it is, that's probably, that's
a
an issue.
legal question.
That's an issue.
this
Yeah.
would be.
My longer question might actually wind up being the easier one. I was going to ask also, you've shared a lot about your background in education, and I really appreciate that Stacy asked you when you felt you made a difference, or when you helped facilitate change, right, in something where you knew that change could be made. In education, one of our goals, of course, is to raise really well-rounded people. As an exemplar of a well-rounded person, do you serve on any like nonprofit boards, or have you been in a circumstance and I'm asking you to perhaps cite an example outside of the education profession where you saw something in your community or on a board that you served on where you saw something that was a challenge and you helped facilitate positive change?
I can tell you that I've had medical issues since I was in my late 30s, and my disease makes one very tired. And so I had 3 priorities: my job, my family, and God. And that's where I spent all my energy.
Okay.
I did not serve on extracurricular boards. I was not a member of a lot of different committees. I don't have that energy in order to do those kind of things. I can tell you that I feel that I have made a difference in my family. I've made a difference at my schools, and I've made a difference at work.
Okay. Thank you, Jenny.
I don't have any further questions.
Good to hear.
We're down to just about 5 minutes to go. So if you want to wrap up with your closing statement, you got plenty of time. You got 5 minutes.
Well, I do apologize if the residency is an issue. We are, like I said, we are closing on our home, and we've already bought the home here in Greencastle, and we do plan to live there. So hopefully that won't be an issue, because I do feel like I have a lot that I can bring, a different perspective, and to still honor the superintendent and the administrators and their work, and just understand a little bit about where they're coming from and what they're presenting. And that's about all I have to say, I think.
Thank you.
I hate to say it, and I don't have the reorganization plan right in front of me. I do have a memo from the school board attorney from some years ago, and I don't think the reorganization plan has changed, but it does say you have to reside in the city. And so, and
But
I
I
wish,
do.
but you don't.
Sort of.
You don't. So I don't think, but you will, and I hate that. I wish.
Well,
that
Lori,
would have been-
is there a statutory definition to residency? Because I think that was ruled by intent, isn't it?
intent to sometime live in the city in the future?
Well, correct, yeah.
Yeah, but could we, well, let me ask you this, and maybe this is a discussion. we
We'll
should have.
look into
Yeah,
this.
Yeah.
Yeah, but, I mean, could I say that I'm going to move in the city and then run for council, or do I have to reside in the city at the moment of my election?
Well, I feel there's a statutory answer that
think you-
we'll get.
I think you have to have
Like I
some
said,
sort
I
of
did
residency
ask
prior.
ahead of time because I didn't want to put myself through
Right,
this
right.
and waste anybody's time.
And we
But-
wouldn't want to waste your time either.
Right,
That's why we have an attorney.
yeah.
I'll have to look
Sure,
in,
it's-
I'll have to look at the exact language that's in the reorganization
If you
plan.
need me to go sleep there, I can go sleep there, even though I don't have a bed yet. If that's what you need. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Jenny.
Oh, Jenny,
Yes.
we will, assuming we make a decision tonight, well, either way, I will text you.
Thank you.
Assuming we make a decision tonight, we'll text you. If we don't, we'll just tell you that we've tabled stuff. Okay?
All right,
Thank you.
thanks.
Do you want to take a 5-minute break before?
We can, is Lee already here?
Yeah, he's upstairs.
I think he stepped out to take a phone call, actually.
Okay. Can we take a break right between the two?
If you're- that's up to you.
2 and 3? Yep, that's fine. So we'll come back at 7:25.
No, I'm glad you opened it up because
Chance to stretch and rest.
it would get challenged and then we lose.
Does anybody want another water or anything?
I would love a water because I just drained this
Okay,
thing.
for the benefit of the people watching at home, we're just taking a 5-minute break between the 4 candidates. We'll be back in about 5 minutes.
Well, one of the documents I have says that they must reside within the district for 3 years before taking office.
I don't even know if all our other candidates do.
Thank you, thank you. It works, thank you very much.
Okay, that's why.
She's going to be our neighbor. She's coming to the city.
Yeah, because I,
God, did I miss that?
no.
Okay, I feel better.
Probably last 2 weeks. That made the comment.
Careful, you may not be lying. I thought I missed it, but ran checks, I thought.
Yeah, they're
everybody.
selling their house.
Thought I missed it, but I ran checks and everyone, as best I could.
One condo,
But hers did come in a little late, so,
Yeah, no, it's,
I mean, not, late, she was legit.
yeah, no, it was, yeah, 96 Ridgeland Road, which is,
Darrell Hodgson's mother-in-law.
Lee, we took a couple-minute break.
yeah,
It's been busting my butt all day, and I don't need to sit on it anymore.
Well, and Pete,
Yeah.
you seem a little mellow tonight now.
If I don't have the whole reorganization plan, which I might not have a copy of it, we may have to table this to get the answer. Because one of the documents that I have states that you have to be a resident for 3 years.
3 years.
Years.
Yeah, I just saw
You
that.
better ask that question then tonight.
Oh, I planned on asking a different candidate.
So I'm just not.
Yes, please. Yeah. Thank you. or comments, and then we'll start in with questions and answers, and go from there. We have about 40 minutes in total, and then a closing time for some closing statements.
Just want to kind of introduce myself. I'm Lee Price. I've lived in Greencastle for 43 years, all my life. Fire chief of Madison Township Volunteer Fire Department. Have been on the department for 26 years, currently getting ready to be 16 years as fire chief. I took this opportunity to put in for the school board position due to everything that's happening in our schools nowadays. I think that our school needs to work better with our emergency services. I work close with Greencastle Fire on a lot of stuff. Myself and their assistant chief communicate, and I think it's been 3 or 4 years since we've done any kind of like active shooting classes or anything like that with Greencastle High School or any of the schools. So hopefully that we can get going that way if I am appointed to that position.
Okay. When you say any of the schools, you mean just within Greencastle?
Yes.
Okay, because I know that just recently they did
Cloverdale did one, yeah.
Yeah, just in the last few months.
Yep.
And there was one scheduled for Greencastle that got canceled
Because
this
of
year.
COVID, I suppose.
Now, this year it was,
It was supposed to be a car accident
yeah, it was a
for the prom
It was a
thing,
car
and
accident.
it was too cold, so they canceled. And then I talked to the guy who was actually in charge of the whole thing, and he just said, nope, not rescheduling. The school doesn't want to.
It was at the end of the year.
Okay, so it's just recently that,
Yeah.
okay, so it wasn't like,
No, it was like March,
okay,
April time.
okay. Too cold. It was chilly.
It was,
but-
no, it was. It
it
was
was
freezing
chilly.
that day.
Yeah,
It was.
April was very cold.
I think it was a
dreary and
high
rainy.
of 32 that day and mist.
Yeah, it was bad.
Okay. Well, we appreciate you coming in, and so we'll go around and ask some questions. So, how obviously COVID has affected us all, and including our school system. How effective is remote learning? Do you feel has remote learning been, and how do we best address the learning loss of our students?
Well, as far as remote learning, I think it can be used very well, but at the same time, I think that it is something that if we take too much advantage of it, then it's not getting used to teach our children anything. As a fireman, I've used Zoom and all those other kind of apps because I teach fire classes throughout the state, and during COVID, that's what we did. We taught our students through web, and I had some that it was a great thing for them because they were able to focus on it, learn, versus sitting in front of somebody and listening. But I had my other ones who never done the work, and I know that from people that I've spoke to, my children haven't been in school in 5-6 years. Some people that I've spoke to, they loved the fact of being able to use the computer and teach their kids at home. Others said that it's after so many times their kids weren't focused on it no more. So I think it's got its pluses and its negatives. I think that I know when I was in school, we had our makeup days if we missed days, and I think it was one of the better ways to do it because the kids were getting hands-on stuff at that point in time, in person. From somebody that's taken quite a few web classes, I can say myself that I see myself wonder when I'm staring at a computer and don't have somebody there talking to me. I feel that's probably what happens a lot with our web-based stuff.
Okay.
You talked a lot about safety, which is, I mean, in light of everything going on in our country, obviously is paramount. Beyond that, what other goals do you have for the school board or yourself, or what other goals do you have for the Greencastle school system?
To be strictly honest, I really haven't thought outside the box of the safety side of it, due to the fact that
Profession.
I haven't been involved with the schools in 5 or 6 years, since my kids were there. I know that when my kids were going, one of the things that my kids did, I tried to get them involved in was sports. that point in time, one of the big things that my daughter, she was a softball player, and I know of two gentlemen who took on voluntarily starting up the softball program again at Greencastle High School. And if it wasn't for them, it wouldn't have been there. So I think that if there's any kind of extracurricular activities we can find for these students, then it's something we need to work forward to, just not classroom and people who want to just do the sports, maybe find something else out there that goes into everybody's world.
Have you attended any school board meetings here in Greencastle?
No, I have not. I usually just kind of look over the minutes is all I do. And it's
Okay.
been a while since I've done that.
Okay.
Like I said, with my kids not being for 5 or 6 years, I used to pay attention to them a lot when my kids were in school. Now that they're not in school, I don't pay attention. And now I have grandchildren. Probably another reason that I've put in for this is hopefully see where I can help get to school out by the time they get there.
There are 5 members on the board. There's a lot to it. I mean, whether it's budgets, whether it's, usually the superintendent will make recommendations, but the school board is rubber stamping it and approving it and that type of thing. It's real important when you only have 5 members that the people that are there have a voice and can go to bat for whether it's the students or the teachers or the support the superintendent. Can you give an example of a time in the past where you were passionate about something and you had to speak up? And what was the outcome?
Well, I'll use my fire side of my life. Like I said a while ago, I teach for the state on fire, and I currently and have in the past been going through issues with the state as far as, they're not, the way they're doing some stuff with our training and allowing certain things. One of the big things is we have a minimum of how many students we have to have in the class for the state to pay for it. Well, they had that at 15 at one point, and just like the school board, in a district with 6 other people, and we argued with the state back and forth through emails, letters, and everything else, and we actually got that number dropped to where it was at 15 and now it's 8 on our students. We had to take that to the point where, it was like you are taking from these people who want to go out here and learn, because the volunteers, Monday through Friday, they're working their 8 to 5 jobs, so they had to do it in the evening. And if we cut them short, well, we weren't giving anybody the training. So they have a lot of classes that they were trying to do during the day. I just sat down with the state training officer for the Indiana, and me and him had a 2.5-hour discussion about a class that they made only affecting paid fire chiefs in the state of Indiana. And now I have to go to the IVFA and battle that because it's them that has the issue. So I do that on a regular basis. I have to put myself out there, whether it's with the state of Indiana or my trustee of my township, to justify what we're doing and why we're doing it.
I've got a quick and easy question, hopefully easy question, and then I'll tuck into something a little more challenging. How long have you lived at your current address listed on your application?
I'm either getting ready to hit 12 or 13 years. I can't remember exactly what spot I'm at.
Okay, great, thanks. I'll preface what my next question with, I appreciate you sharing that you were teaching fire classes over a video conferencing connection. I think that it's important. I didn't recognize, just looking at your background here on your resume, it didn't stand out to me right away that you had shared some common experience with some of our educators here in Greencastle. And I think that's an important distinction to make, because I think having empathy in a school board is really important, and having had that experience hopefully gives you the opportunity to step into some of our teachers' shoes in the school corporation. some of my last question has already been asked a little bit, but outside of fire and emergency services and being a machinist, I'm curious, where do your passions lie? Do you volunteer for any causes or anything in the community that help give us a better insight into what drives Lee Price into being passionate about the Greencastle community and making better outcomes for school students in our school corporation?
Well, again, back to my children when they were in school, one of the things that I did a lot of volunteering for was the rec ball teams that they played on. I helped coach them. I've been a sports person ever since I was a kid. I wasn't lucky enough to continue playing sports in high school. I ended up getting hurt, couldn't play no more. So I kind of tried to live through my children with that. And currently, I just told somebody the other day, a friend of mine who was on the fire department with me, he is talking about coaching softball. I have no children involved in that, and told him if he needed any help, I would be more than happy to step up and help him with that. Sports is a real big thing to me because it gets the children out there and lets them do more than just video games, TV. I don't think that there's enough of that. I see that you used to see sports every time you turned around with kids, and you don't see it as much anymore. You hear a lot more about video games and everything else, and it's just something that drives me the wrong way because I want kids out there playing. My kids were outside playing, having fun if they weren't doing sports. So I had a daughter who played 3 different softball teams the same year. We would do travel ball, high school ball, and rec ball all throughout the same time. So I was always at softball games. So sports is a big thing that I would love to see more children doing.
Thank you.
Can you speak to your concerns about learning loss that we may or may not have had during the pandemic? What you would do to assess it? What you would do to go about tackling it?
Well, of course, during the pandemic, a lot of children lost that opportunity of being able to be educated until we came up with the systems that were put out there to learn from home base. I think that with the proper research, there can probably be a lot more done in case these pandemics ever happen again, versus the computer system, whether it be how we set up classrooms to give them the proper learning in a face-to-face area, or if we split our days somehow, figure out some way to split the days. So, if we just, for example, have 500 children going to a school, we figure out how to split that day, 250 at this time of the day, 250 at this time of the day. It would all, of course, depend on our budgets. And with the pandemic going on at that time, the budgets were, of course, crazy because money wasn't coming in. But if there was a way that we could still get the kids to school and let them learn on a face-to-face basis, I think would be our best thing, and doing the research to figure out how to make that happen. Even if it meant going out there trying to get grants to help us facilitate that.
Thank you.
Lee, you've been a lead instructor for some time when it comes to fire services. Can you talk a little bit about the principles and maybe even some of the content and what it is you bring to the table to do that?
One of the big things is as an instructor, you have to intertwine with your students. You can't just focus on one student in the classroom or these 3 and cut this one out. You've got to help them all. I've had students that personally in my head I thought, well, this is going to be a challenge. And sometimes those are the students that have excelled way past because they wanted to learn, they wanted to figure it out. So that was back when I first started, so my approaches now are, I just fill out all my students that are in the class. They all get the same treatment to the extent of how I teach in the classroom. Now, if we're doing any kind of practical skills, I have multiple students throughout my 12 years of teaching that I've had to help, whether it's standing there on a face of a ladder with them, talking to them, because they couldn't climb a ladder because they were scared of heights, and then they do it. I can say that I've never had a student fail any of their practical skills. Can't say that about written tests. That's one of the things that happens. But every student that I've been involved with that's ever done practical skills, even if I've had to talk them through it and help them figure it out, they've done it.
Never fallen from a ladder.
No.
Okay.
You or the students.
Do you do this work on a volunteer basis, or are you compensated by the state?
I am paid through the state of Indiana.
Okay.
I have helped multiple fire departments without any compensation. Because to me, it's one of those things I got to help people get this.
Thank you.
You talked in your in here about a lot of, and I think probably the recommendations you had talked a lot about your leadership and everything else, with being on site, or whether it's with the drills and what have you that you go through. So can you expand a little bit more on your leadership capabilities?
So, especially since I've been a fire chief, I have always been that, my wife tends to hate it, but I don't leave town. Because if something happens at my firehouse, I want to be there. I want to make sure that my guys are safe. I want to make sure the job's getting done. If any of my guys ever have a question, they know all they got to do is pick up the phone and call me, and I will help them in any way. And I can say that for most of the fire departments in our district, which is made up of 8 different counties for District 7. I have guys call me all the time, hey, we need to get this class, can we do this, da-da-da-da, and I help them all I can. Myself and Assistant Chief Rob Frank of Greencastle Fire, we are always communicating, talking about different classes that we need to get and figure out how to get them. Himself and I have just recently been trying to get another class set up, and he wasn't getting the answers from the state he wanted. So as the Putnam County representative for District 7, I took it upon myself and just called the state and like, hey, we need to get this done. Why aren't we doing this? And now we're finally getting somewhere. I have a sit-down meeting with one of the state guys in July, and Rob's going to hopefully get his class that he wants to have. So as far as my leadership skills, I've always been there for my guys. I'm always will be there for my guys. And I feel that in the fire service, you have to make quick choices. I mean, your decisions can't be thought about a whole lot when you're out on a fire scene. And for 15 years, somebody feels that I continue to do that job very well and make my decisions pretty quick. So if I'm put in a stressful situation, my leadership skill comes out, and I have no problem handling what's put in front of me.
I think I'm good.
So Lee, you never take your wife on vacation?
I wasn't gonna ask
That is a strike against you.
Okay, so
That's just messed up.
I pay for my wife to go on vacation.
You don't go with her?
No. She recently just got back from Mexico in March. Last year I sent her on 4 vacations with her aunt. So yes, I send her on vacation. I don't go on vacation. I have not been out of the state of Indiana since 2016.
You know this is going out live.
Yes.
Okay.
Did you at least zoom into Mexico?
No.
Live vicariously through her travel.
Yes, she tells me all about it. She sends me pictures.
Yes.
Good deal. I just had a vacation question. That was
I
it.
just stay
so-
right here.
Go ahead.
I have no further
Okay.
questions.
I have no further questions either.
I'm good. I think, I was going to ask this question. So we've had we hear an awful lot about turnover at the, principal levels, the teacher levels and everything else. How do we best encourage our teachers we have, or teachers that we recruit, or administrators we have, and administrators we recruit, to make Greencastle a place to which they set down roots and make it a career here? How do we best go about that?
So, of course, I might hit nerves with people watching or something. My daughter actually went to ISU to become a teacher. And one of the things that I always heard her complain about was the pay that a teacher makes. So if there's something out there that we can figure out how to maybe get more money in these teachers' pockets, because what they do is, personally, a strenuous job. I mean, to me, they probably have more strenuous issues than I do when I'm fighting a fire. My daughter currently works at a place, it's not a school, she works with autistic children, but one of her things is some of the days she just comes home stressed because of the things that she's had to deal with that day with the children. And those are little kids. As we all are aware nowadays, but teenage children, a lot of them think they already know everything there is to know. They don't need anybody to tell them. So I think that if we figured out a way how to, whether it's figuring out a pay method to make them feel better about it, or if it is how we award our teachers per se. Like I said, I don't know a whole lot about the schools right now as far as what they do, but are we doing anything to show our appreciation to these teachers and these principals and stuff? And if we're not, then maybe we ought to figure out some way to do that.
Okay, I think, anybody else have any questions? Okay, so I think we're ready for your closing statement.
I just want to thank everybody for the time, first off. And if I am not appointed, then maybe the next time it comes open, I will put back in again and try again.
We do it every 2 years.
And if I am, I can guarantee you I'm going to do whatever within my power to try to help our school system, along with getting them involved in our community more if they're not already involved a lot, and with our emergency services, whether it be Greencastle Fire, Greencastle Police Department, the Sheriff's Department, our local ambulance service, or even Madison Township, who has kids that go to Greencastle School. So, other than that, I thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your time.
Assuming we're able to make a decision tonight, I will text you or call you.
Okay.
If we're not able to make a decision, I'll text or call you.
Either way.
Either way.
So you don't have to, the banner might have it up faster than me.
So we can all sleep tonight.
Well, not the banner.
Careful now.
Well, if you call me and I don't answer, I'm going home to get on top of a roof next door to help
I'll
somebody.
probably do it. I'll text you. I'll text you.
Just a side comment, with your background as a machinist, the city has partnered with the schools, and we've funded maker spaces at both the middle school and high school, and I'm sure some students could benefit from your skills and experience as a machinist as they, experiment with all that equipment and things like that. So, might be an opportunity for volunteering.
And thank you for all your volunteering with the fire departments, too.
It's a pleasure. I enjoy every
Not let
day.
that go unnoticed.
I enjoy every day of it.
We appreciate our partnerships with our colleagues on the volunteer departments across the county as well.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Lee.
Well, I had this timed up right. About 10 minutes.
Okay.
About 10 minutes.
Another break, I guess. So Russell gets here.
Has Russell been on for 4 years, or did we appoint him halfway through?
He was an appointment from
By the school board.
by the school board.
You and I were invited.
That's the one, okay, I
We
get
were
them all mixed
invited
up.
to that.
Is he Lisa?
Yes, Lisa McCoy's replacement.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, both of our appointments, or both of our current members were first appointed by the initially by the school board to take somebody else's term, finish up somebody else's term.
But Russ
Okay.
was the first time we were ever invited.
So
Yes.
the reorganization plan was filed, original one is, I think it was 1954. Then the schools had to reorganize in 1964. I'm not sure, there was a whole thing in the count, I think everyone in the county had to, and maybe it was statewide
Consolidation.
at the time. Do you know more about
But
that?
no, I was a part,
So
I'm old enough to be, that's my era.
So it had to be done in 1964, so it was done in 1964, the reorganization plan. That's when it went from, they split up and included both Greencastle Township and Madison Township as separate appointments under the board. So then, so now we have, hang on. I have the pertinent excerpt from their attorney. This happened during the Lori Richmond years when we had all those issues, and they sent me this excerpt. 5-member board, 1 from Madison Township, 2 from Greencastle, and 2 from Greencastle City. Greencastle Township, Greencastle City. You all know all that already. Each 4-year terms. But it says that members shall be 25 years of age. However, since that time, state code has said you can be 21, and any rule saying otherwise is invalid.
Supersedes.
So, yeah, it supersedes anything otherwise. So, 21 years of age, and that's in the Indiana code. I have the site for that if anybody wants it. And then,
Russell, you don't have to go upstairs, I don't think.
and then it says members shall have been residents of the respective areas from which appointed for a period of 3 years, preceding appointment. So,
Okay.
Okay.
That answers that.
That's a
That
big,
answers
that's a
that.
big residency requirement.
now,
We didn't ask
That-
anybody if they were 21.
we don't have either of those things on our application. We'll need to add that.
Yes.
But owning a residence is not a requirement, and that's in state code also.
They can rent.
Yes,
So
of
you
course.
can rent.
Sure.
You do not have, well, some board appointments, some,
Park
some,
board.
some,
Park board.
you do have to
Oh,
own a
really?
residence.
Because we ran into that.
So, but this one, the state code specifically states that ownership is not a requirement.
The park board requires residency in a physical house.
Resident.
Resident, you have to
Yeah.
own a house. You cannot rent.
Ownership.
You cannot rent.
Thank
So-
you, Lori.
There you go. And that was submitted to me, that excerpt was submitted to me from their attorney, but it's stamped from the state. I mean, it's the copy from the state, so.
Thanks.
Yeah, there you go.
All right.
Thank you, Lori.
We'll definitely need to put that on the,
Yes.
I mean, it's been so many years that we looked at this in that much detail because we really needed to at that time. It was a difficult
The
situation.
other thing that hit me while we were asking questions was, I don't remember doing this 2 years ago, but of course we didn't do this 2 years ago. We had to do something, I don't remember what we did.
We
I'm
were-
sure that- Yeah. It was all, what a mess.
Yeah. And I checked all the addresses people gave, but address she gave fell into the city limits, so I didn't realize that wasn't.
Well, and regardless of 3 years.
Well,
That's a
I didn't
shame.
check.
I mean, you hate to,
Hey, Russ, you 21?
We'll save the other question because Veronica wants to ask it.
I'll ask it. You know I'm going to ask it.
So he's like, what is it? Why don't you come on up?
It's easy. Quick and easy.
Yeah.
Yep, please. Approach the
Russell, we're on
dais.
TV, so that's why the microphone.
Sure. All
You're
right.
looking sharp on TV.
I'll see you.
Best dressed.
You don't have to worry about the sun's not coming in and hitting you and blinding you and everything else, so,
All right, very good.
yeah. So welcome, and thank you for coming in. And
Yeah, thank you.
So we've got, we'll have some questions for you this evening, and we'll start out, I think you already know, we'll give you about 4 minutes for an opening statement. You got the 3 minutes or something like that at the end for a closing statement. We'll have 40 minutes or so of questions or whatever. If we run out of questions, then we'll just knock off early, I guess.
Okay.
So,
All right. Well, I'm not sure I need 4 minutes, but I just want to share. You know, I'm a husband and a father, and you know, while those are the most important things to me, I am a community member, and I do think it's important to be involved in the community you're in. When we first moved here, in all honesty, I was kind of, so I asked my wife, I was like, where did you bring me? What is this? And, but it didn't take long for me to fall in love with the community. I think there's a lot of great things here, and I've seen a lot of growth. And so while all mine were young, I kind of focused on that. And then as they got older and you have a little more time to be involved, I tried to do that and still try to do that. And so, so that's kind of my story in a nutshell. So.
Okay. How long have you been on the school board?
Just one term, so three years.
About
So
3 years. I
filled
remember
a term.
how long that appointment had been, so.
Yes, yeah.
It was the majority of the term, so.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. So, so with your experience on the board and everything else, can you address, during the COVID pandemic, our school teachers have been affected, the administration has been affected, everybody's been affected.
Sure.
How effective do you feel has remote learning been? What can we do better, or whatever? And then the question about learning loss is in there, and how measurable is that, and how real is it?
Wow. Well, so during the whole time. So first of all, remote work. I think we did a great job, really, to be just kind of thrown into it, right? I mean, nobody was fully prepared for that, and so I feel like we've done a great job with that. You know, one of the things that I think can be done better is there still has to be that some sort of connection, some sort of personal connection, because I feel like you can lose that through remote, you know, and internet and things like that. So finding out what that looks like, or being able to still address a lot of the needs that students have, because, you know, teachers are great and unique in a lot of ways that they are able to teach, but they also are able to see a lot more than you know, just what the learning needs are. And so I think being able to tap into that is something that really need to be able to focus on. The other thing is that remote learning gives a bit of a disability. I shouldn't say disability, but you certainly see where there are gaps, right? So economically, not everybody has the same tools. And so when you're in the classroom, there's difficulties there, but when you're remote, it's way different. It's different in, you know, not just resources, but, you know, maybe even some of the help that students receive. And so I think that's also something that has to be addressed in whatever way that it can be addressed. And going forward, I think that, you know, we'll probably have times where we'll need to do that again. I think we need to be prepared for that. As far as the learning gap, you know, it's there. So we know that there's a degree of setback. But again, I think that goes into, you know, I think what we'll find is that some students actually learn better that way. And so some of the students that
maybe struggled in the classroom, to some degree have done better in that environment. But then for others, it's the opposite, and not just because of help or resources or anything like that. It's just that that's not it's not the way that they learn. And then you have that piece too where, if you don't have that help, you don't have that guidance, you don't have somebody kind of keeping you on track, when you're 9, right? I mean, it's hard to stay focused on everything else, especially when you got a, SpongeBob or whatever everybody's watching is off to the side, you know what I mean? And so, or a busy house or little brother, sister, whatever it is. And so, so those things are there, but, yeah, so I think we just have to learn how to meet those individual needs way more than you do in the classroom because you are isolated. So I hope that answers what you're
Yeah,
looking for.
so is there quite a bit of a social interaction loss, obviously, I think, to the whole remote learning? And
So in my opinion, I think that's it's interesting because, so yes, there is, but we also we know that a lot of the younger generations or even, the older generation at this point, that's really what they do. And so to some degree that being in close proximity obviously is gone. But students are still communicating with each other because that's what they do mostly. I mean, I see it all the time where you have a group of students together, or young people that are together in the same room, and they're all on their phones, right? They're all, they're doing something collectively. But so I think that piece, we need that. We need to be close together. We need to be able to interact and see each other. And I think to be able to put a hand on somebody's shoulder, I think those things are important. But I think that I just think the younger generation is a little more resilient in that way because that's just what they do.
Okay.
Well, somebody who coaches and teaches, you hit some of that in the head. The way they interact and the way I'm recruiting is, these kids don't want to call me, but they want to Zoom with me, and it just amazes me, high school seniors and juniors. But I just thought about it. You've basically been on the board for COVID. That's been it's so interesting.
And the mask controversy.
Yeah, I was like, man, I didn't sign up for this. I did, but it's like you never think
saw it
that
coming, though, did you?
Oh my goodness.
I'm going to be an optimist, which I'm not usually, and that's going to begin to move away. We're going to move forward.
Okay.
How do you? We're weird. We appoint you. That's not normal in the state. You should be running, but you're not. How do you see yourself moving forward, engaging with this community and making sure that people from all over this community, because we might not have a racially diverse community, but we certainly have an economic, educationally diverse community. How can you make sure people know they can reach you if they want to talk about the schools?
That is.
And how do you engage them? Maybe not even know that but how can you engage them? Because you can see our audience here tonight.
Sure. Yeah. Well, that's a great question, and I think it's something that I've tried to bring up several times. We've talked about it. So I think one of the things I think we really need to try to find some forums that as collectively as a board we can engage the community. There are slippery slopes with that, but I think that it's the same way. So school board meetings, we don't typically get a lot of people that show up. I have had people reach out, and in a variety of ways, and and that's everything from CME in the grocery store to we're having dinner somewhere or whatever, and I always know it's coming when somebody says, "Hey, you're on the school board, right?" and then it's like, okay, here's this question. But a lot of that too is what is, so some of the things that are brought to me aren't always school board issues, right? So, and there's a process to it. And so have you talked to your teacher? Have you talked to school administration? Have you talked to the superintendent? Have you gone through those processes? Because as a school board member, I can't just go over that and say this is what it is, or storm the school or whatever. And so really to back up on your question a little bit, I think that understanding the process is one of the first things that we need to do, and make sure that the community understands what the process is. That doesn't mean that you can't still reach out to your school board members. I think that people should, but there's a process, and to give teachers and principals and everybody a chance to get it right, if there's something wrong. But really, I'd like to see that, where we can have, even if maybe it's just once a year, but we can have some sort of forum where we can be able to get some sort of community feedback, and whether that's in person, some sort of town hall type session, or whether that is just send me your question week or whatever, and something like that. So that's what I'd like to see.
Do you think it's possible to have a constructive survey sent out where people could and get? Do you think that would be possible without it turning it that slippery slope down?
I think yes, but I think that surveys are interesting, and the fact that it's left up. So questions are left up to personal interpretation, right? So I think that there's not really a lot of so we can do that, and it kind of goes out and kind of gives us direction to go in. So I don't think it's a bad thing, but I think that just sending somebody and asking somebody, this particular question, their interpretation of that or what that looks like or whatever, you don't get full context on that. So
Interestingly, it's actually something I cover in one class I teach, and it's something Kent Menzel at DePaul does a lot. A good survey, the question should not have that, because you would pre-screen it. So what you could do is you create your survey, and then you sit down with 5 random members of the community, and you say, here's the question, now what did you hear in the question?
Sure.
So that they're not answering it right then, but they're trying to tell you is, what am I reading versus what you're asking?
Right. That's a great point. I'm
That's not my total, that's a one-day lecture.
Yeah.
But, I know there are a couple people at DePaul that actually do that as a course.
Well, and I'm certainly no survey expert. I think I think one of the things that I would like to see is just really, more people involved. Stop by a school board meeting and just see, right? And just see what's going on and how it works. And if you have questions about, so the school board, we leave a portion for questions or comments about agenda items, and that kind of happens early. But I think that somebody could still not fully understand. So, show up, ask questions if you have them beforehand, but if not, reach out to somebody and say, hey, can you shed a little light on this? And I think that will open that up also. So.
We're on YouTube, we're on Zoom. Is that ever a possibility for a school board? That's not my question, but that made me think of that.
We do.
It's on.
Oh, the school board is?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So, thanks.
What's your viewership?
Thank you, COVID.
Yeah.
At least
tuning
one.
in?
At least one.
Okay.
There was 2,
Okay.
Yeah, even with that, it's not, I don't have an exact number, but
At least it's
not-
there if people
it
want
is
to
there.
do it, so that's good.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is, yep.
I think they posted it on the school corporation website too.
We do,
Yeah.
yeah. So that's, that kind of came out of COVID.
I didn't
Like,
know
how
that.
do we?
Yeah, that's great.
How do we do that? And then, we were like, well, I mean, we're doing it and it works. And so let's keep doing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so.
I think it's
that's what we do.
fantastic, yeah.
Yep.
Thank you for your 3 years. I know the job's probably challenging at times.
At time.
I know that you had a superintendent retire, you guys put in a replacement, Jeff's doing a great job. Looking back on your 3 years, not, other than COVID, what has kind of been the biggest challenge?
COVID.
It's all about COVID, but was it what you expected? Is it, do you have as much say as you want to have? Can you speak up?
Sure, most definitely. And so, really, I think one of the biggest, so the superintendent search was a big challenge, right? Because you want to get that right.
Yeah.
And so.
That's the most important thing a school board does, right?
Exactly, right. So for me personally, so all of these things happen. So I come to the board, and then now we're losing a superintendent. We got to find a superintendent. We go into COVID. We have, all of these things. And so that was challenging, the superintendent search, because, we're a school corporation that, has some struggles financially and, and those type of things. And so finding the right person that can help financially, can be as transparent as we need to be for the community and all of that. And that was just something that you have to get it right.
Yeah.
And so aside from COVID, that was very interesting, challenging, and really kind of fun and rewarding for me also. So
Good.
I was going to ask, in contrast to the most challenging, what the most rewarding thing was, but I think you already answered that. So I've got a brief and hopefully simple question, followed by a more challenging one that I'm still conjuring at the moment. The brief and simple one is how long have you resided at the address listed on your application?
17 years.
Okay. My next question, since I'm pivoting and riffing a little bit here, but I've been thinking about, what makes a great team, right? And a board, a council, any group of people that get together, they're a team, right? And usually a team that brings different things to the plate, right? The Avengers are better because they each have a superpower. The Fantastic Four is more fantastic because they each do their thing, right? What's your superpower? And for extra credit, how have you made a difference on the school board using it?
That is interesting. A superpower.
That's a hard one.
Sorry, you've had the position for 3 years, so you get the hard questions.
Sure, that's okay. Yeah, I think so. My superpower is the ability to read minds, which no, that is not. It would be great. I'd love it. That'd help in a lot of things. So really, I believe that part of it is through just life experience and people that I've been able to connect with and people that have been able to kind of pour into me. That is to be able to objectively see two sides of a coin. Okay. And so that has really helped in the sense that, so I know we keep going back to COVID, but there was a lot of controversy or issues or whatever, right? And so, but you got to be able to step back and say, okay, so what are these people feeling, right? What are these people feeling here? What are these people feeling here? And not just with things like that, but even in the board, on the board, to try to understand where someone's coming from when they think we should make a certain move or make a certain decision. And to be able to find that common ground when there is. Sometimes there's not, but a lot of times there is. And so I think that's, I would say that would probably be my superpower. I think there was a second part of the question that maybe I didn't answer, but what?
Yeah, so how have you used the superpower to make a difference in our community?
That's for extra credit, though.
Okay, all right. Well, you know, I might need that. So, well, if I'm honest, I haven't had to use that a whole lot. I believe that the board works really well together, and since I've been on the board, really always has. And so, again, not everybody, you know, doesn't always end in agreement or whatever, but
there's transparency between.
Sure, yeah, and there's respect there, and so I think, so fortunately, haven't had to, you know, put anybody down with my powers, but, you know, that's, but, you know, so, yeah.
Excellent, thank you.
So I've been trying to ask the same questions for each candidate, and I might just have a little spin on this one, but given, because I usually ask about learning loss, but kind of in the context of decision-making, can you speak to what data you look at and how you use that to analyze the problem and tackle it?
Yeah, well, I mean, so it kind of depends on the situation. So, you know, we're looking at data that comes from the school, from the administration, right? So, financial data that we receive, you know, monthly. If there's something going on, we receive that. You know, in making decisions, you know, we're doing a lot of work at the schools right now, so being able to, you know, review those bids, being able to do that. As far as learning standpoint, looking at where we are in this school according to you know, test data and things like that, and then what does that look like across the state? So all of that information is available. So being able to look at where we are compared to other county schools, where we are in comparison to the state, and then really what are some other places doing? What are they doing in Idaho, or what are they doing in Texas, or, you know, whatever, and just kind of seeing what that looks like or where that might fit for us. But yeah, I mean, ultimately it depends on the situation, but most of the data that we use is data that's kind of generated within the school or within the state.
Thank you.
All right.
Brian Langdock, in his letter of recommendation, talks about him asking you to serve as Gobin Church Coordinator of Risk-Taking Mission and Service. I'd be interested in what's involved, but I'm interested in your thoughts about why he chose you. He talks about it in the letter, but I want to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, so risk-taking service and mission really is, you know, being wanting to do some things that are maybe outside of the box, to kind of connect with people, and to maybe get people outside of their comfort zone a little bit, right? So, because I think the only way that we grow as a community is to get to know people that aren't in our circles, that don't look like us, talk like us, walk like us, all of these things, right? And so, so there's a lot of risk in that, but it ultimately should be service, right? You want to help. What are, you know, try to look at what are some needs that you can serve, and then ultimately, you know, that's the mission. But I would say. I would say that he chose me because I love people, I love community, and I'm not scared to get outside of my box. I don't even know that I have a box, but I'm sure somebody else has a box for me. But yeah, I would say that, you know, that's probably it. That he knows that I love people, I love this community, and I want to be able to serve in a way that, you know, things like the school board or city council, or, you know, different. There's a lot of things that are done that people don't see and they don't know and don't appreciate But I think in risk-taking mission, I think there's a way to connect with people that feels a little more tangible, so.
When we had our downtown discussion of the condition of the downtown, Russell called me up and he said, maybe this mission group could help with cleaning the downtown. He said, I'm also involved with the NAACP. And I said, Russell, let's wait and see what the mayor does, which he acted on the next morning at 7 o'clock at the street department. But, you know, I appreciated the fact that you were willing to call and ready to scoop some
Yeah.
Doggy doo-doo.
We still may call because we're talking about some strategies that could provide an opportunity.
Okay, all right.
We want to get a little more homework to do.
Sure. But that's community, right? I mean, it's not just, I don't know. I don't want to sound, you know, preachy or anything like that, but I mean, that's what I believe we're here for, right? I mean, we gotta, you know, if there's dog doo-doo on the ground, we got, you know, if it's not getting done, somebody's got to do it, right? And so, you know, there's layers to that, but I won't go there right now.
How do we best encourage our teachers and our administrators that we have here and ones we recruit and everything else to make Greencastle a career? You know, how do we get those to, you know, I mean, we know that people, you know, some people are just, we're just a way station, you know, they're coming here to get some experience and moving on. How do we change that culture?
Well, I'm going to give the big answer that isn't the easy answer, and it's pay. I mean, that's, you know, we got to make it worth it, and I don't mean that, you know, most teachers aren't going into it for the money. I think they understand the situation, right? But we're so close to areas that that just can do better from a pay standpoint, and I think that's unfortunate, but it is the situation. The other thing is we got to let teachers know we love them and support them, right? I mean, it's like, and I know this from, you know, being on the school board and seeing and hearing things. A lot of times, the only time you hear something from somebody is when they're mad, right? I mean, nobody's calling you up to say, you know, man, you know, you really did a good job, or hey, I really appreciate you guys, and so I think there's a level to that that the community has to let teachers know that it's easy to, you know, throw something on your social media or whatever and things like that, but it's also good to get an email or a letter or you know, phone call, or to stop by the school, or to let a principal or superintendent know, like, you know, hey, Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so has done a really good job, you know, and so I think there's that aspect of it. And, you know, one of the other things is that, you know, I think we're in a unique area that really, honestly, I think Greencastle Schools could and should be one of the top schools in the state. We have, you know, this higher education that's around. We have, you know, these factories that are here, this industry. We have a great farm community that's here. And I think being able to make those connections and work with the schools and work with the teachers and provide those sort of tools or insights or out of the box experiences, field trips, whatever it is, I think that can really empower teachers and help make them feel a certain way too. So
This is just almost a yes/no question.
Okay.
You can go one sentence maybe. You talked about our financials.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and I know school finances are just like city finances. They're complex.
Mm-hmm.
Money comes from the number of students. It comes from tax bases, grants. But the tax base in Greencastle, Putnam County is unique with a lot of charitable organizations. If you were to put $100,000 into the school budget, would that make an actual difference, or is that just too much a drop in the bucket? Would $100,000 improve our libraries or some of our academic programs, or is that just not the type of money you would need to make some difference?
Yeah, I mean, $100,000, better. That's a lot, I mean, that's a lot of money, right? I mean, no matter what you
I
do,
think it's a lot of money. But on the flip side, I mean, the Greencastle School total budget is in the millions.
Sure.
So the question is, if $100,000 fell from the heavens today,
Yes,
that would make a difference in our students' educational lives.
yes, it would.
That's all I want to know. Thanks.
Just a segue from that. Are you writing a check, Adam? or-
No, I'm going
Okay,
to
all right.
just not say anything more and plead the fifth. Because
Mental health is in the
some
news.
people know where I'm going. It's not-
Mental health is in the news a lot, and there's nothing sadder than when a teenager or a student takes their life or tries to. I know you don't deal with this, day to day from being on the board level, but as far as to his point, extra money, is there discussion? Are there dollars available? Is this something that's kind of front and center for the school? I know that, you can only do so much, but it just seems like this should maybe be a priority in this day and age.
It's getting there. So I don't. So the short answer is I don't think that it is where it should be. But it's getting there. There's a lot of conversation about that. There are things through the state, as we start to have more and more of these conversations that are available and resources that are available. And so I know that the administration is paying attention to that and looking at that, but we've got a lot of work to go, and I don't want to go too deep down a rabbit hole, but there's a lot of layers to that too, right? I mean, it's so being able to sort out all of that and address all of those needs, it's a very difficult thing, and I don't.
But it's on their radar,
But it's
and
on their radar,
conversations
for
are
sure.
happening. That's
Yes.
good.
Yep.
If we have more housing, we'll have more children
More children.
and more money to the school system. I don't know whether it's out of date or not, but a few years ago, I heard it's worth $5,000 per student. So if you pick up 20 additional kids,
Sure.
There's
There's
$100,000 falling out
$100,000.
of the sky.
That was one of the two places. That was
there are
one of
costs,
the two
too.
places I was going. That's a discussion for another night.
yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Yes, if you have 20 more students, you may need another teacher too. So it's all
Sure.
a balance game. I appreciate Stacy's question about mental health, and I also want to honor that our community is challenged with food insecurity, and for many of the students in our community, the lunch or the meal that they get through the school is the best meal that they're going to get all day, right? I appreciate that helps to resolve some of the disparity, economic disparity in the community, and some of the food insecurity. I don't have a question about that. I just wanted to uplift that and point that out. But a wise man once said that in every group there are thinkers and there are talkers and there are doers. Which do you see yourself as?
There might be a fourth option, too.
There might be a fourth option, but
Well,
I was going to ask that again, but
I gave you a chance. It went around once.
that's my only good question for that.
It came around once there.
Is that plagiarism?
I attributed it to a wise man. So there you go.
so of those three, I would say that I am a combination of a thinker and a doer. But if I could throw a fourth in there, I would say a dreamer also. I think that thinking and dreaming aren't exactly the same, and they can come together. But trying to see a vision, beyond what you're thinking about or doing is important. And so, but of the three, I would say I'm a combination of a thinker and a doer.
Great, thanks.
No further questions?
Other questions here?
I'm done.
I'm sorry.
And Stacy? Nope. Okay. Veronica, any more? Okay, I think.
Mr. President, can you indulge me one question?
Sure.
I don't have any say in this game. It's council's decision. But I would be interested in, we've got a beautiful Ivy Tech campus right across from my high school.
Sure.
And my perception, and it could be wrong, I'll readily admit that, is that our school district is not taking advantage of that resource here. What are your thoughts on a strong relationship with Ivy Tech to benefit our students?
we have to do that, and so to be fair, those conversations are happening to make that happen. But we have to do that. I think, and as I mentioned before, not just Ivy Tech, but we have DePaul here, and I think that there is a good connection there. But even with the industry that we have in town, local farms and all of these things, I think that collectively we could really be building some programs that would put Greencastle at the very top in this state. And sometimes I scratch my head as to why we're not there yet. But I think we can get there. And so, but the Ivy Tech, especially, to be right across the street, they offer credits to, once in high school, that they can start to earn credits before they're even out. So, that helps and obviously saves on costs down the road and all of those type of things. So we just have to, really a lot of it's, being able to promote it and push it and make sure the community understands. I think that one of the things that we have to think about when we talk about these things, we talk about higher education, is that we're also in a community where, a lot of people struggle, and a lot of people come from families that their parents didn't go to college or anything like that. They maybe don't know anybody in their family that has, right? And so we have to understand that and make sure that is something that's in the minds and create that too. So it's just a little side thing, but.
Russ, as an aside, as those talks with Ivy Tech continue, it's very important to consider where those classes occur. Different colleges treat a class taught by Ivy Tech on a high school campus differently than a class taught on the Ivy Tech campus, even though they're 100 yards away.
Right.
And for kids who don't know, that can be thousands of dollars in difference.
Right.
In whether the college will accept their credit. Same teacher, 100-yard difference.
Well, and to my understanding, that those conversations are to get students on the campus, and
That's correct.
And that's not just to.
Right.
It's to get them outside of the school and to, just kind of get that feel to be in that building and what is that, what is that like for them? So.
Working with kids coming to DePaul and other schools.
Sure.
It makes a huge difference where that class occurred.
Right.
And how certain schools treat it. I don't know why they do that.
Well, and also setting foot on the college campus helps
It's helpful, as always.
It defeats some of the imposter syndrome that some of those first-time college students might have, thinking that they might not belong.
Yeah.
Sure.
Absolutely.
I'm here.
Well, and it's important for, so for those that don't have the money, college visits can be expensive, right? You're traveling and you gotta, possibly stay somewhere or whatever and things like that. And I understand that's a trip across the street, but it kind of opens that door.
Absolutely.
It can open that door. So that's,
Yep. Yeah. Thanks, Bill. Anybody else have one more? Okay. I think we're ready for your closing statements or whatever.
Yeah, I'll be brief. I just want to say that, well, first of all, thank you for this opportunity and everybody being here and the questions that made me think. I love being on the school board, and it's been a great opportunity to serve in a way that I never thought that I would, one, be interested in, and two, just never thought that I could do, if I'm honest, and so it's been a great experience, and I would love to be able to continue that, and to help the school corporation grow, to help add some vision to things that we can do, and just be involved in the community in that way. And so I will just leave it at that.
Okay.
I will contact you tonight. I guess it's an open meeting. You can stay. If we make a decision tonight, I'll contact you. If we don't, I'll contact you.
Okay. All right.
Thank you for your service to the schools till now.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you.
I would actually love to stay. However, I'm in a jacket and a bow tie, and it's like 100 degrees. And it's like, even though it's cooler in here, it's still hot. So I think I am gonna pop the bow tie and head back home. So,
Okay.
all right. Thank you so much for your time. I really
Russ.
appreciate
Thank
it.
you, Russ.
Bye.
Oh, yeah.
What's that word? No, that.
Hey, sorry.
Okay.
A great idea.
So we've had our 4 interviews, and our goal is to make a decision this evening. I think that we have discovered that one of our candidates is no longer a candidate,
Or is it potentially 2 candidates? If we have a 3-year residency requirement to be within Greencastle city limits, does that then knock out other folks? Because you asked those
I think everybody,
pertinent questions.
I think we
everyone
affirmed
else-
that the other
Okay.
3 have been here for
Said
longer than 3
Yeah, he
years.
said our first candidate,
Live
said
next to Mark.
he lived down the street from me
Oh,
for at
okay.
least 3 years.
So
and then
Mark
he's
can
been in
attest.
his current residence almost a year. So I don't think there's any question that but we do need to make sure that is in future.
Yeah,
On the-
I'm going to go
updated.
add that tomorrow
Yes.
so we remember 2 years later.
Bryce's residency is right up on the line, but it is.
Inside.
the mayor
It's my
confirmed
backyard.
that.
Yeah.
The mayor did confirm it's on our side of the,
Thank
As long
you.
as it's before you get to the mouse hole, so, and I'm sure it is. Otherwise, it'd be a county road designation.
Yeah, and that does raise an issue, because I feel like we've unfortunately done a disservice to at least one of our candidates tonight, so I feel terrible about that.
I do too, but
Well, it just speaks to really kind of the archaic way in which the articles of organization have been communicated to the public, because I don't know if the school board has the articles of organization on the website. I don't know if they're even on file with the state, because I've been reached by people, throughout the years who've been interested in figuring out what they need to do to change it from appointed to elected. You need to look at the articles of organization, and I'm not even sure if they're on file with the state.
Well, they're
So-
filed with the state because it's
Well-
stamped at the state.
Well, it depends on who you ask then, in
Now,
which
whether
department.
they have it, yeah.
Yeah, so is that something that we can put on our website, since it has requirements for our appointees?
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I got the excerpt from the school board attorney, so I don't have the full set.
Okay,
Um,
can we get it?
I'm sure that the school would have that, but
Yeah.
I can ask. I'll ask that.
They should put it on their website.
Yeah, I would love for our appointee
We'll
to
get
put
it
it on
if
the
they
website.
don't.
Definitely add
I'd
it
love
to
for
our
us to put it on.
2-page form. That's no problem.
I think there are 2 things to remember. You're right, I do feel really bad for her. But the address she listed, which is not the address she's currently residing.
Well, that's questionable, because under election law, which doesn't necessarily cover this because it's an appointment, residency has a different definition, and it depends
We
on
would have picked
intent.
that up.
Yeah.
I mean, it was not intentional on our part. We would have picked up in the screening
Right,
at where she's currently residing.
yeah.
I don't think she did it intentionally, but
But that would have hinged on the time limit that the requirement actually is set in the
well,
Articles of
that part we
Organization.
would not have picked up
Yeah.
on. But
So-
the first trip would have come, which address you list.
Yeah.
Now, the school attorney wrote us all this because several years ago, in a time we're not going to relive because Lori will kill me, council and the school board were a little bit at war. We'll just drop it at that because we're in good moments now. It's a new era. Happy to share it off camera. I'll share it with anybody, but we don't need to relive those.
No.
Different superintendent now.
Different superintendent, different school board. Very cooperative agreement. There was a point where there was some serious differences. Darrell remembers it too, I'm sure, because some of that landed in the county. But anyway.
Let's move on.
Yeah. I agree.
We have great candidates.
Yes.
So I guess, if we want to, I think we should have some discussion and motion and second. And so I'd be entertained, any of those.
Do we do this by hand, a ballot, or?
If it's necessary, if we have, multiple, but if it's unanimous or close to unanimous, I think we can just do a voice vote.
You
How
need
many
a
times
motion
do I get to
before we
vote?
discuss it.
Usually there's just a motion.
Yeah,
And a second.
and then that opens up discussion, so, yeah.
Okay. I personally would like to make a motion to reappoint Russell Harvey so we can open it up to discussion.
I'll be glad to second that motion.
And the reason I say that is, one thing he said to me that really stuck out, he understands the process. He understands the role of a school board member. He understands, the parents, the administrators, the teachers, you don't overstep, you go through the proper channels. He's been through challenging times. He got us through COVID. They had a superintendent retire and then appointed the new superintendent. And most importantly, when I hear him talk, I think he has a vision for the future and a love for Greencastle schools and the community. I mean, they were good candidates, but in my mind, Russell stood out.
The letters of recommendation were really helpful for me. As a parent of two GCSC students, I took particular interest, along with many others, in the return to school plan for 2021. I reached out to Russell at that time to share a few specific thoughts and concerns about the proposed plan. He took time to talk with me personally, share my email with fellow school board members, seek clarification regarding some issues. I feel Russell has been fair and open-minded in his approach to leadership and has fulfilled his role diligently. He's got a servant's heart on top of his experience, and he's on the Human Relations Committee here at the city, which I think says a lot. And so
I call for the question.
Okay, we have to call for the question, so all those in favor of reappointing Russell Harvey? Is he still here? Oh, he left, didn't he? Okay.
We have to call the question first? Well,
He did.
He did.
Oh, we don't have to vote on that? I never know.
I don't think so.
Okay, good.
No.
Move on.
All those in favor of reappointing Russell Harvey to a 4-year term on the Greencastle School Board, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, passes 7-0. So, and with that being the only remaining item on the our agenda, I would entertain a motion and a second.
I so move.
Second.
We're out of here before dark. I didn't think that was going to happen.
I called 8:45, I did.
And I said 10 o'clock, I did.
We are nothing if not efficient.
Who was the second?
I think it was in mass.
Okay.
Who was the second?
Veronica.
Veronica, okay.
Veronica, okay.
All right.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Veronica. Thank you all very
Yes,
much.
thank you, everybody.
I think you guys had a great meeting and great presentations by all